because their primary attention was how to take care of themselves. So in order to hire a new group of people that would not be self-sorters, what Southwest Airlines did is it held group interviews where they asked each individual to get up from the front of the room and to talk about why they wanted to go to work for Southwest Airlines. These individuals who applied for the job thought that they were being graded by how great a speech they could give or how impressive they were when they communicated from the front of the room. In reality, Southwest Airlines was evaluating the people while they were in the audience to note who was giving the most support, who was sorting by others. If a person was sitting back, not paying attention, gazing off into space, that obviously was a self-sorter and not the kind of person they wanted to hire. They selected the individuals who were smiling, nodding their heads, supporting the speaker at the front of the room with all their heart and soul. As a result, Southwest Airlines cut their complaint ratio by 98%, and they still have one of the lowest complaint ratios of any of the airlines. This is the power of understanding sorting by self versus others. By the way, would you want your attorney to be an other sorter? When he went into the courtroom, somebody said, well, gosh, we should do this for other people. You should not just work with your client, you should try and help us as well. There may be places where self-sorting is appropriate. How does this relate to other things? Would you want an attorney with an external frame of reference or an internal frame of reference? Probably a certain amount of balance, but hopefully he has to have a strong internal frame to fight for your case. Otherwise, he's going to be persuaded very easily to the other side. What if your attorney was a total matcher? Whatever the other guy said, he began to match up with it and go, yeah, that's true. You'd have some real problems. So my point here is there are no right or wrong metaprograms. They're all context related. And the key is to develop balance and to be able to have the choice to use the metaprogram that supports you and not be stuck in any one. If you begin to understand all these metaprograms, you have a tremendous power to motivate and persuade people who you could never have affected before. I used to believe that everyone moved towards, that everybody operated out of possibility, that we all had a strong internal frame of reference, and then we did get feedback, that most of us were convinced by what we saw, and within one or two times of seeing something, we become convinced, that we all saw how things were alike with exceptions, and that we all sorted by others. I came to find out the reality of the world is quite different than the way I held it. In fact, I can remember one time right after I learned these metaprograms, how I was able to use them to motivate someone I'd never been able to motivate before. Many years ago, there was a man that my partners and I did business with, who one day just decided to walk off with $50,000 of our money. Being a sorting by others person and wanting to move towards a positive solution rather than take the man to court, I suggested to my partners that we get him together and we sit down and we find out what's bothering him and see if we can create a way to support him and also, of course, get our money back. So we sat down in a meeting. And as we sat down, I set the frame of the meeting. I said, John, I just want you to know that we're all here together to really support our relationship because we want to move towards a solution that really empowers all of us. We think it's really possible that, by working together, we can create a solution that we're all excited about and we're all happy about and we all leave feeling like it was really a win-win situation. He turned to me and said, listen, I don't give a damn what you guys want, which immediately showed us he was sorting by what? Self. He said, I'm only here because I have to be, which told us he sorted by necessity. He then said, and besides, I don't give a damn whether or not we get a solution that works together. All I want is your turn to stop harassing me, which showed me he was moving away from. I said, well, look, I don't want to cause harassment for you. I just want to create a solution and that all of us are happy about. He goes, I don't care about solutions. I just want you guys to stop doing this. I said, well, I want you to be happy, and I definitely want to get our $50,000 back. He says, I'm not giving you the $50,000 back. I said, why not? He said, I'm just not going to. I said, it's not your money. I mean, we could take you to court. We could even probably press legal charges. He said, I don't care what you say. He said, I am selling you my portion of this business. I said, you're not a partner in the business. He said, but I help to promote seminars in this city, and so that makes this my business, and I'm going to sell it back to you for $50,000. I said, look, you've promoted us twice in this city, and you lost money for us on the first event. On the second one, we barely broke even. You've not been an effective promoter by any stretch of the imagination, and this is not your business. I said, you can't charge us any figure you want. Where did you come up with this figure of $50,000 for this quote-unquote business? He said, I didn't come up from it anywhere. I just know it's worth $50,000. I said, but what formula did you use? Can you give me one example from the real world where somebody got paid $50,000 for this kind of thing? I said, here's a business that's not made any money and you don't even own it. He said, it doesn't matter. I know what it's worth and that's what you need to pay me. He obviously had an internal frame of reference. He needed no support from the outside world to maintain his beliefs. The final straw for me is when he finally turned to me and said, listen, this thing could have succeeded if you would have helped more. And I said, what are you talking about? I came to the city and did more promotion for your team than I did for any other city that I've done in the last 6 months. He goes, yeah, well, what did you do for us last month? His convincer strategy was he needed to see me do something, and he needed to read about the results, and he needed to have me do it every single time. This was a giant mismatch of our personalities. Here's a man who was moving away from, I was moving towards. Here's a man who was moving basically out of necessity. That's why I made it to the meeting. I was moving out of possibility. Here's a man with a total internal frame of reference. I had a strong internal frame, but also had external desires as well. Here was a man who was sorting by self. I was attempting to sort by others, meaning he and I. And here was a man who had to be convinced every single time versus I just needed to see something twice to believe it was true. So as I continued to try and convince him, I began to say things like, you know what, we've been at this 2 hours, and it's only out of my commitment to support our relationship that I've continued this, but I'm losing my patience. I say, every time we start moving towards a solution, you move away from it. And then all of a sudden something clicked inside me, and I went, meta programs. I just heard about them, I just begun to learn them. And I began to realize he was the opposite of all the things that I was used to. So I said, okay, I know exactly how to motivate this man. It's not the way I normally would, but I know how. So I turned to him and I said, I have had it. This is it. I said, there's no more possibility of creating a resolution. There is now a necessity. You have 3 minutes to make a decision. And that decision is to pay us the money that we have or to lose in every single area that you can think of. I will make sure that we go and tell everyone that we know, and we tell them on a regular basis how you ripped us off, and I will take you to court. And maybe inside you don't think this is true. And the reason I said this is because he mismatches. I said, so go ahead and think it's not true. By saying this, of course, he immediately had to think it was true. I said, in addition to that, I said, you know inside what's really going to happen to you and all that you're going to lose if you don't change. You have 3 minutes to change your mind and give us the money and get things handled right now. Otherwise, you're going to lose it all. And if you don't think I'm going to do it, think about it again. Well, by doing this, what did I do? I gave him something to move away from. I let him know it was a necessity. I appealed to his internal frame of reference. I let him know that I was going to consistently let people know what he'd done, which is part of his convincer strategy, and I let him know that he was the person that was going to lose, not us. Well, it took about 45 seconds, and all of a sudden he stood up, and he smiled, and he said, hey, I always wanted to support you guys. I just wanted to get to the point where we could really talk like this. And you know what? I'm really excited about it. I'm more than happy to continue working with you, and I'll return the money. The change was so dramatic, my partners and I looked at each other, and we all began to smile and try not to laugh. I mean, this man was not upset. I would have been upset if someone threatened me in this way. He was actually motivated because it appealed to his meta programs. This didn't feel bad to him. This felt like how it should be for him to be motivated. When he left the rooms, my partners asked me what I'd done, and I explained to them how I had appealed to all his meta programs and produced a result in an area where we never, ever in the past could have produced a similar situation. Of course, after he made the agreement, since he was a mismatcher, he tried to go back and change it, which is why we don't do business today. But we do know how to handle those kinds of people, and before we develop promoters for us, we notice, do they sort by others? Do they move towards? Do they operate out of possibility? Are they finding out how things are like with exceptions? Do they have a strong internal frame and yet they can still take feedback? That's the kind of person we need in our business. You need to take the time to take a look at what kind of people you want to surround yourself with in business, in life, and in relationships. Have you ever wondered why it is that some people look at a glass and see it as half full and others half empty? I know the basic responses that we've learned in the past have been attitude makes the difference, and it does. But a greater understanding beyond attitude allows us to understand why certain people select certain aspects of any experience and focus on it while they delete, distort, or generalize other aspects of human communication. The quality of our lives as human beings is determined by the quality of the patterns of our behavior. As we have discussed in this program, people's behaviors come from the way they represent things and also from the way they use their physiology. But there is a key question we haven't answered, and that is how come some individuals receive the same stimuli? For example, two people see a glass of water. One represents it as being half full, the other represents it as half empty. This is a basic question that we've answered in the past by saying, well, one has a good attitude and the other person has a poor attitude. But the answer is actually much more specific than that. There are certain factors that determine how much of any experience we become consciously aware of. In other words, in any experience in life, there are almost unlimited stimuli in which we could become aware. But our conscious mind can only handle so many pieces of information at one time. However, our unconscious mind can handle an almost unlimited array of activities, billions of activities that are happening in any split second inside of your body.